Hi guys, welcome to my workbench again. I've got a new mat. It's a lot nicer than the other one. It's easier to see stuff on, so hopefully this will be really good. So, if you've been watching my page and you've been watching the internet, you might know about these. And this is an SCX-200, an Armatan light one actually. And this is a pre-production model, or sample I should say, that I've been lucky enough to get my hands on. Since I designed the frame originally, and Armatan came to me to basically open source it to them. They were kind enough to give me some frames to play with, which is really nice because these things are sweet. And so this is really nice. But this video today is not about the Armatan Light SCX-200. It's about some kits that I shipped out recently. The Armatan Productions produced limited edition SCX-200 kits, which I put together myself. And the reason these are limited edition is because they include a bunch of aluminum purple anodized hardware that normally doesn't come with the kit. So I'm going to show you what's in here today and explain how it all goes together, because I've had a couple questions on how the frame goes together, and I had two videos that explain this before. Now I'm going to consolidate it to one to make things simple. So I'm going to go ahead and lay the pieces out here and explain what everything is for, and we'll go through the quick assembly of the frame. Alright, so here I have the contents of the package laid out. You should have a bottom plate, a mid plate, a top plate, 4 arms, a bag of carbon accessory plates, we'll call them, and the hardware bag, which is going to have all your anodized purple aluminum hardware. So, first thing we're going to do is build up the main section. For that, we won't need the top plate yet. We won't need these carbon accessories. We'll just need some of the hardware, the plates that make up the bottom, the mid, and the arms. So we're going to take that and assemble that first. But I'm going to break out the hardware and show you what you need from the hardware package to assemble the center section. Okay, so I've gone through the hardware bag, and basically I've separated out the hardware we're going to need to start this. And what I've got here is I've got 4 of the long button head screws. I've got 8 of the slightly shorter socket head screws, 4 M3 lock nuts, and 4 M3 nylon nuts. You're going to need a 5.5 inch nut driver, and you're going to need a 2.5 millimeter and 2 millimeter Allen wrenches. So first thing we're going to do, go ahead and grab our mid plate, our bottom plate, and one arm. And you can see the way the arms are, they've got this little notch in them. Now the notch, the way this aligns is like so on the plates. So when you put it on here, we actually want to put it on the bottom plate like so. And we want to put the mid plate on, and then what you want to do is go ahead and grab one of these 8 medium length screws, and you can put this in through the top or you can come in through the bottom. It's your preference. I like to put it in through the bottom. Put the arm there, and then you're going to go ahead and lightly put this nut on here. You're not going to tighten this down all the way. You're just going to take the M3 lock nut, just thread it on there until you get it to start, and that's going to hold the first arm in. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and take one of these longer socket head, button head screws and stick it through the far hole in the arm. Now this is the hole where the flight controller stack is going to go. So what we want to do is take a nylon M3 nut and put that on there. And we're going to repeat this through all 3 arms, and that'll build our middle section. Once we've got that all set, we're going to tighten them down. Okay, so I'm going to come back to the camera once I have all of them started, and then I'll show you how to tighten it up and make sure that you got everything assembled the correct way. Okay, so I've got the 4 arms assembled in here loosely. You can see I haven't tightened anything up yet. And you want to make a special note. Remember, the notches in the arms have to line up with the cutouts in the mid plate. So you want to make sure that this area is lined up properly. Otherwise, the plates that go vertical will not fit in there. So you should have this ready to go. You should have 4 more screws left from the mid-size screws. What we're going to do now is grab the 4 standoffs that come in the kit, and we're going to put those through as well. Those are going to go in the hole that's about halfway between the other 2. So we're going to go ahead and stick the screw through the bottom. We're going to put the standoff in, and we're going to repeat that 4 times. It shouldn't take you too long to do. Alright, so now you've got all the screws through the bottom plate. We can go ahead and tighten them. I would go ahead and suggest that you would tighten the outer and then move towards the inside. It's up to you, it doesn't really matter, but we're going to need the 5.5mm nut driver, and we're going to need both the 2.5 and the 2. We'll start with the 2, that's for the bigger ones obviously, at the outside. Snug those up. Okay. Then you want to go ahead and tighten the standoffs just a little bit. You probably won't be able to tighten these all the way, but you can go ahead and try. They're easier tightened with the top plate on. And then lastly, you want to go ahead and get your 2mm driver and the same nut driver. And you want to just snug these up just a tiny bit. Since they're nylon, you can't really tighten them that much because you'll strip the threads out. You just want them snug enough so that they're not going to move around. Okay. Alright, so now you can see we've got our assembled middle plate section, and we can start assembling electronics onto this now. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and get your battery strap. So I'm going to go find a battery strap real quick and come back to the video. Alright, so I've got this Rotor Geeks battery strap I'm going to use, and basically you're going to want to take this and you're going to turn the frame over and you're going to thread it through the 2 slots over the mid plate, through here, and there you go, you've got your battery strap ready to go. So once you've done that, and there's a reason why you want to do that, is because the next thing you're going to do is go ahead and take your PDB, and I've got this Maytech PDB which I really like, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use this to distribute all the power for the quad. So right here you can see this is intended to be the side where the battery leads come in. I want this pointed out the back. If you notice, the back is here. There's actually 2 holes for you to zip tie your power lead as it comes out to kind of strain relieve it. We're going to go ahead and set that on our stack. And then we're going to go ahead and grab 4 of the nylon standoffs that also come in the kit, and we're going to snug that down. Alright, so now we put the PDB down, we have the standoffs on. This would probably be the stage where ideally you'd put your motors in, you put your ESCs on, and start soldering all your main power wires. So, in the kit, and I'm not going to show this because I don't have a spare set of motors, you're going to get a ton of these small little M3 by 6mm screws. And you should have enough to do 4 in each motor, plus you're going to have another 4 for the top plate. So, that's what those screws are for, and we won't be using most of them in this tutorial. We're going to show you just the parts of the frame that I have to put together, not the whole electronics package. Okay, so now we've gotten to the point where you have all your ESCs assembled. We'll just assume that they're on here with the motors and everything ready to go, power lead sticking out the back. Now we want to get our FPV gear on here so we can start wiring that up. So we're going to put this to the side, and we're going to go ahead and open this bag of carbon accessory plates. And in this bag you're going to have several pieces, and we're going to dump them out right here and go through what they are. So the first one is going to be your VTX plate. It's this vertical plate that's going to go on the back. You're going to have an anti-rotation plate that goes with that, and then you're going to have 2 different sets of camera plates, and there's a reason why. And basically these were the original design ones, which work well with flight controllers like the Lux board, or also the KISS FC, where you kind of have this recess here. What happens is when you use those, it allows your cam to tilt back and they're not going to touch the board. It's also intended for the bottom connector, HS1177. This one's a top connector. So the bottom connector has a little more clearance with all your flight controls and your PDB stack when this is all assembled. But if you have the top connector, what you probably want to do is go ahead and put those to the side and keep them, because you could always use them as spares. But you're going to want to use these 3 overlapping hole plates. You can see they kind of have 3 overlapping holes. What that does is it allows you to push the camera forward if you need to, and it has 2 benefits. It gives you more clearance with the flight controller, and it also allows you to get a lot more tilt actually. So if you're really looking for extreme tilt beyond 55 degrees, go with this. Now I don't know what the top limit of that is, but it's just insane from what I've tried. It's probably like Matty stunt style, like 60 degrees plus if you put it at the furthest hole out and then slam it to the top plate. So we're not going to fly like that, but we're going to go ahead and use it for this build. So first things first, since we're going to go ahead and start with the camera plates, you got to have your HS1177 ready to go. you want to go ahead and grab 2 of the screws that came with it, and you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver. And what we're going to do is go ahead and assemble these to the plate, noting that, see the kick out? That's the bottom side that's going to go into the lower plate, and then this side is the top side, which slots into the upper part of the frame. So we want to make sure that our connector is oriented properly for that. And since this is a top mount, we want to have it something like this, if you can see that. So we want that connector on the top with the plate aligned to the top. Go ahead and take this screw. This part's kind of hard to do, to be honest, because these screws are so tiny and you got to hold all this stuff together with one hand while you're holding a screwdriver. But just go ahead and you thread that in there. Sometimes these screws are hard to get to start because they're self-tapping. Yeah, these screws are kind of terrible, to be honest. Well, anyways, you got one on. Now we can go ahead and go to the other side. And I wouldn't snug them up too much yet. I would just go ahead and put them in there somewhat snug but loose, because you might have to realign this once you get it in the frame. Alright, so now we've got our camera assembly ready to go. We've got our connector at the top. You can see, like I said, the profile of the plates. This is the top, this is the bottom. Alright, we're going to set that to the side and move on to our transmitter now. So, in the kit, you're going to have the 2 plates that make up the transmitter mount, the vertical mounting plate and the anti-rotation. You're also going to have 2 different O-rings, and a lot of people have asked what the 2 different O-rings are for. Basically, it's just to take care of the fact that depending on what transmitter antenna you use, the gap might be different. So you got a 1mm thick and a 1.5mm thick O-ring, and I would suggest starting with the 1mm and making sure you have enough compression on that you're happy with it, and if it's not enough, then go to the 1.5, and we're going to go ahead and start assembly of that now. So you're going to need your VTX, your antenna, and you're probably going to want something like this, which is an antenna wrench that VAS sells with all their antennas, and I like using it because you can snug up things without over tightening them. So first thing we're going to do is go ahead and take the VTX, and we're going to take this VTX mounting plate. Now the orientation of this does matter. The longer side, this top faces the top, the shorter side faces the bottom. So you want the dip switches pointed towards this face right here on the VTX anti-rotation plate, because that's the side that's going to face up. So you're going to take your VTX, stick it through there until it's seated on the SMA, right? And you're going to take your O-ring, stick it over there on the SMA, and you're going to take the VTX plate last and line up the profiles so that you can see it like that. And you're going to go ahead and grab your antenna, thread it on there, which might take me a second to do here. Now keep in mind, this is a TS5823 I'm using with a Fat Shark antenna, and this TS5823 actually came from Stone Blue Airlines, so it is an SMA, even though a lot of times these are RPSMA, so you guys don't have to comment on that. I know which antenna to use on this. Anyways, you're going to snug this up. You don't want to tighten it too much, just enough until it can't move. And give this a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So now you want to give your antenna a nice little bend, and this is going to go on the frame like so. So we've got this pre-assembled. We've got the camera pre-assembled. Now we can go ahead and take the frame, which we already wired up, assuming, and we can lay out where we want to wire our FPV wires. So that's why we haven't put the flight controller on still, because this particular flight PDB has pads for you to wire your VTX and your camera in here. So what I like to do is just put this in here in the front, and it should just kind of pop into the slots pretty easily. You just have to line it up. There you go. And then that gives me the length of wire that I need to run to the PDB. So you want to do the same thing here with the VTX, and what I usually do is I run both sets of wires up the front of the PDB, right coming out here, and then up and over the flight controller to get to the VTX, and just to the connector on the camera. So that makes it pretty easy. So once you've done all that, and you got your wires hanging out for your VTX and your cam, the last thing you want to do is go ahead and add your flight controller and your receiver. And obviously your flight controller goes right there. You'll have 4 more nylon nuts that are included in the kit to snug that down, which you can put on there. And what I've been doing is I've been taking my receivers and I've been depinning them. And once you've depinned them, you can solder them directly to your flight controller. And then what I do is I put shrink wrap around them and I zip tie them down to the flight controller with a piece of double-sided tape to help secure it, and that's usually good enough. So we've got this flight controller in, we've got the receiver wired up, which obviously I'm not going to show, but you should know how to do that if you bought this kit, I would assume. And we're going to move forward with the final frame assembly, and I'll show you some of the other features of the frame. Okay, so go ahead and stick this in here. We want to plug it in with the wiring that we have in place. Okay, we want to go ahead and take our VTX, put that there. Then the last thing we want to do is grab the top plate. And what you're going to do is slot this on here. Both vertical plates for the camera will go in the front, and the vertical plate for the VTX goes in the back. Then you want to grab those last 4 screws. They're M3x6 millimeters, assuming you used all your screws for your motors, and some people just put 2 in. You want to go ahead and put these in the top plate going into the standoffs. Go ahead and grab our 2.5 millimeter driver, snug those down. And now we've got the frame built. So you can see the last screws are in there. You've got your dip switches easily accessible right here for your VTX. If you have a Hawkeye or U-Bab, they'll be here. If you have a push button, the push button will be right here as well. You'll be able to see the LEDs down the center. So you want to make sure that your antenna is snug and that it's not just gonna, you can see I can bend it with my hands, but it's not gonna move. So that's snug enough. And you want to go ahead and adjust your camera angle to where you want it, and then tighten these down on the side. And just be careful not to strip these out because they are self-tapping screws in plastic, so just be careful. And then some people have even put a zip tie around here going around the camera neck to kind of secure it even more, which you can do if you want, but I'm going to have other options to help secure this, including a 3D printed mount. So now that you've got your frame, the last thing you want to do is on the back plate, and this might be hard to see, there is a little slot right here, and the intention of that slot is for you to pull the wires for your receiver through. You can pull them through and then feed them up through the top plate right here. And on the top plate you got 2 more holes. Now I have a whole nother video that explains how to use those holes to mount antenna tubes, and you can go watch that on my YouTube channel, or you could just use zip ties and heat shrink and have the zip ties hold the antennas. I prefer the antenna tubes because unfortunately I've cut a couple of antennas from the zip ties flexing into the prop, so it's really your call on how you want to do that, but that pretty much is the frame in a nutshell. That's how to assemble it, and it's a complete tutorial on how to do the SCX V2 assembly. So thank you for watching.